Hey guys, Infidel 1258 here. Today I want to prepare another video for you addressing the comment section. I've got a comment from somebody who's a little bit frustrated with the complexity but also the enjoyability of Splinterlands as a blockchain-based video game. And the critique seems to be that if you have all the cards and all the assets, maybe this could be fun, but if you don't have the sort of budget or that background, then you really can't find joy here. And I want to push back against the comment, of course, but hopefully with a degree of respect that can honor the comment and maybe unpack a bit of a different perspective for some of you who are walking in some of that frustration or that disappointment or whatever you might call that. So if that sounds interesting, I invite you to stick around and stay tuned. If you're new to my channel, my name is Dwayne Cunningham. I go by Infidel 1258. You can call me 12. Leave comments on my channel on any video, maybe this one, and I do regularly review them and turn them into content. So if you leave an IGM, I might just send you a little thank you afterwards. So keep that in mind. So I was looking at the comment section and I'm going away for the weekend. I'm going to a men's retreat for my church. So it's like 200 guys going away to this beautiful, rugged, resort in the middle of rural British Columbia. We'll be there for a few days, getting into the Word, spending time with friends, meeting new community members. It's just going to be an awesome time in a beautiful place and away from it all. So I won't be creating content while I'm there, trying to get ahead of it, therefore. And so I hit the comment section today and I saw a cool comment from Perry Project here. 3 days ago, he dropped a comment on a recent video where I talked about card inflation will not stop card appreciation. And inflation's not everything was the argument within the context of the video. I was trying to articulate the point that, certain cards are being currently printed and other cards will one day be printed. And that is card inflation that, does directly diminish the sort of value proposition of the existing cards. And the argument from the commenter that sparked that video was that by that logic, we will never see new cards hold value because there will always be following cards, like subsequent cards, that will erode the use case because, you'll see replication of old abilities, old stats, old, synergies, which and certain cards will move out of modern into wild and they'll lose desirability during that transition. And for all those reasons, cards don't hold value. And I go, well, you're talking about inflation and you're saying that inflation ruins valuation. But I would argue that supply is not the only issue. There's supply and demand. Perry jumps in the conversation and he says, he cuts to the core of the conversation because to be the real issue isn't does Splinterlands make me money? Is it entertaining? And if it's not entertaining, forget about the value proposition, forget about the opportunity side. It has to be both fun and rewarding. I'm not interested if it's simply rewarding. And you might argue it's not rewarding. And that's a bit of the conversation that video addresses. But I would argue it's both. And I think the core has to be entertainment first, or you won't even stick around to earn the rewards to possibly see the price appreciation and the financial opportunity. And so Perry's got it right when he says, this game is fun for established accounts. He's focusing on fun. He's focusing on the entertainment piece. He's not necessarily even mentioning the finance, and maybe we'll see what the fullness of his comments is, but I love that that's the heart of where he's starting. He wants to talk about, is this game entertaining? This game is fun for established accounts with lots of cards who know what each card actually does and can put together a team with allotted time. Think how the game is fun for new players. I don't think it is. There are too many cards, too many abilities for new players to even know what to do, and the card level systems make it completely unfair. There's a lot of things in there, and I want to keep reading the rest of your comment, but I actually want to stop and just make sure I'm addressing what I think is maybe a really important point. The first is you're actually being critical of the complexity that I would argue is integral to the joy of the game. So when we play a game and there's so many possible synergies within the context of what is the rule set, what is the mana cap, which splinters are available, which summoners do I have access to, which monsters do I have within that context, which ones are neutral because neutrals can get played with any team, which ones are dragon because maybe I'm using a dragon summoner and that can partner in interesting new ways with the other splinter that I get to select. And so I'm agreeing with you that there's a great deal of complexity wrapped up in what that is described as. And it's not just, I think superficially people think that the team selection process is the most complicated part, and I actually disagree. And so I want to add to your point. you're right. This is deeply complicated, and it's not even just from the team creation perspective, which you pointed to. It's not just from the team selection point of view, but it's from the team creation point of view. In order to decide what cards I want to own, I have to be a discerning investor or general manager. That's the way I like to think about it, because I like sports analogies. I like sports. So the general manager decides which players to hire, what to pay them, what they're worth, and builds the team in a way that will be theoretically successful. And then the coach does what? They utilize those players in the best way possible to extract victory on any given game day. And so this match is like a game. The GM built the team. The coach puts certain members on the field. And here we see that I've got Astral Entity as the summoner, which is the Death Splinter. And then we're using the Resurrect with the Cursed Slime Ball that has the Redemption. We'll watch it play in the background as I continue to point out the complexity of the game. You know, what I'm saying is you're right. You're 100% right. This game is complicated, but it's even more complicated than you allude to. It's complicated in not just the team selection, but also in the team creation perspective. And yet I don't think of that as a negative. I don't raise that as a critique. I raise it as I want to accentuate the point you're making. And in so doing, I want to point you to the fact that that's actually a beautiful thing. That's a really cool thing. That this game is that complicated means that when you begin to understand it, as you begin to understand it, and it is possible for even new people like yourself to really get your head around it. It took me time. It will take you time. But if you get to that place where you can actually understand all the intricacies of the different synergies, the different teams, the best mana caps, the best plays within certain mana caps, how do I, take full advantage of certain rule sets, all of that thoughtfulness, as challenging as it can be, is actually a place of satisfaction once you do wrap your head around it. And so you're making the point that it's too complicated to have fun with. And I want to make the counterpoint that its complexity is the place where it becomes fun. And I know that that's not necessarily always the case for everybody, because some people maybe, I don't actually think this would be the case with you based on the complexity of your comment. But I think some people probably it's too complicated for them and they won't be able to wrap their heads around some of this stuff. And I would say not every game is for everybody. But to me, the critique that you're raising around complexity is actually a place of, for me, compliment. For years I've been able to enjoy this game because that complexity creates so much versatility in the daily experience, whether I'm playing, and I haven't even touched on in that conversation, I haven't even articulated the next point, which is the idea that, there's different stages of the game. You have rank reward experience, you have tournaments, you have guild brawls. Now I know that those are all extra complexity to you, and maybe that's frustrating. To me, those are extra layers of complexity that I'm excited about. And then you go into wild versus modern, and that's maybe a place where I want to point you to, because I suspect you know this, but if you're feeling overwhelmed by the nature of how many options you have available to you and how complicated that feels, you can experience the modern and have far less selections. For anybody who's like brand new, just understand that this is Peak Monsters, a website where you can look at all the cards that you can buy and sell for the Splinterlands game. And these are all the different editions of cards. We have Alpha, Beta, Promo, Reward, Untamed Dice, Chaos, Rift Watchers, and Rebellion. And each of those has, between, let's say, probably 30 and 60 cards in each one of these editions. And so if you're playing in the wild format, every one of those formats is available to you. And so that's a lot of cards. If you're playing in the modern format, you're looking at Rebellion, Rift Watchers, Chaos Legion, and some of the reward cards. And so you have a far more reduced selection. And so you would have far less, not only less cards to look at, but also less synergies to consider. And then when you start to pare it down further, because because there's only certain splinters available, there's only certain mana caps available, there's only certain cards that you own, that becomes this selection process that to some extent curates, that it makes decisions for you. Because as complicated as it might be to choose from 6 different splinters or from 20 different summoners, if you only have 4 summoners, then the decisions end up getting simplified for you. And so I guess I'm trying to make the point that the complexity is actually for me a selling point, and I understand that it's maybe a bit too much for you. I would encourage you to maybe try things like modern, but also to give it time, because that side of it becomes far more satisfying. And I would argue a game would lack longevity if it lacked complexity. I've said before, if the game doesn't have agency, meaning you get the opportunity to actually impact the effect, the outcome, you get to go left or right, straight or backwards. Those sorts of choices are agency for the player, and that agency is a place where there's satisfaction in victory, and there's a place of regret in defeat. What I mean is, like, even when you lose, you think to yourself, wow, if I'd chosen the other option, I could have won. That agency is a place where actually the player gets satisfied. And I think you're not feeling that, but that would be my response to the first part of your comment. Let's carry on with your comment. There's too many abilities, and also you're frustrated about facing other people with higher card levels, and that makes it unfair, completely unfair. I think I hear you there. I've felt that, even especially in modern, it's really tricky to play at the highest levels unless you have an astounding, like a perfect deck, really, in my experience. Now, there's certain players who I've seen that Silence is one of them, and he plays at a high level, and he does not have a perfect deck. He plays in Champ 2, I think, last season, and you guys should watch his videos. It's P Silence if you want to find it in YouTube, and he does great content where he gives tips and tricks on how to win at a high level in this game. And he has a good deck. He's put a lot of money into it, but he does not have a perfect deck. And so there's pathways to great, really amazing levels of high level of success with an imperfect selection of cards. But I would agree that you need to have a strong deck, meaning that I can see your point when you say it's unfair for people who don't have the fullness of that. But frankly, you're not going to win 90% of your matches with a medium deck, but you definitely can win a good amount of matches with a medium deck or even a low deck. You're just going to play in a different league and receive a different sort of level or degree of reward. And sometimes we always, in all things with life, you have to decide whether the reward satisfies your desire or if it's insufficient. And if it's insufficient, you're not going to play. And if it's sufficient, you're going to play. The same is true with going out for, a time on the town with your friends. Like, is the cost versus the reward? In your mind, you make that decision every time you make a choice in life. And the same will be true with Splinterlands and whether or not you choose to commit your time and your money or not. And, but for me, this nature of being unfair, I don't think of it as unfair. I think of it as the way it is. And then from that place, it's like, I'm going to fit in certain place within this system, and I'm going to earn a certain reward for that participation. And to me, that ends up then being sufficient. Now, it won't be for everybody, but that's the interesting thing too. When we look at the rewards, you have to always remember, or at least I find it valuable to remember, that the rewards are not actually what you think they are. When we talk about, for instance, in Wild, I earn like 3 SPS per victory in the highest levels, that I reach, like Champ 1. So if I get 3 SPS for victory, and then SPS is worth like a penny, am I getting 3 cents per that victory? Like right here, I got 2.8. Oh, he got 2.8 SPS. Did he earn, let's say 3 cents on that victory? Or did he in fact earn more than that? It depends. Depends how you look at it. Like, does Glint matter to you? Does Soulbound reward cards matter to you? Do you like participating in guild brawls because the soulbound cards are going to help you, have greater success in there? Do you like, and then that's going to unlock gladiators. Does that matter to you? Do tournaments matter to you? You start to really pull back the layers of the ways that the benefit happens within the game. And then simultaneously remember that SPS, while it's at 1.2 cents today, isn't necessarily going to be at 1.2 cents forever. And I believe it actually has a pathway to like $1 at some point in the future. If I'm right about that, and you might say there's no way, okay, you don't believe that. But I think that's actually a realistic possibility. And if I'm right, then there's this retroactive raise that happens later. So the 3 SPS he won for that battle is worth 3.6 cents today. But if he held on to it until such time that SPS was trading for $1 and then he sold it, you can see how that 3 SPS is then $3. And so if you accumulate in times when the prices are low, it doesn't necessarily speak to the value being low. And that's a lesson I like to point back to regularly on the channel, where price is not the same thing as value. Value is what the thing is worth intrinsically, the utility, and price is what you can currently sell it for. And it's so important to draw that distinction, because that will transform your viewpoint on what the rewards are, and therefore maybe whether or not it's satisfying to earn at a lower level of play and participation. And then you might start to think about it because you say it's completely unfair. Well, maybe if you're earning a little bit of SPS and playing in bronze and you're winning every now and then, and you're unlocking that, you might feel that's disappointing because you really don't think it's going to go anywhere. You think SPS is too cheap, but if you change that mindset, maybe it unlocks a different perspective. Let's quickly finish with this. Now, this is similar to Magic the Gathering. Tons of cards, tons of new abilities. New players won't know any of them. How does Magic solve this? They have starter decks that are themed and focused to a handful of abilities that allow new players to learn the game. Is Splinterlands adding something similar to the new player experience? That's a great question, and I'll finish with it quickly. I think Modern is trying to do that. I think we're going to iterate on what Modern looks like in the future, and you're going to see more and more division, but we're looking for more players first. And maybe it's putting the cart before the horse, because sometimes we want more players before we start iterating on what the rank division is, and therefore the rank division is what cards you can use. And so part of us says we want more players before we divide and subdivide the different leagues. But you seem to be saying if we subdivide the leagues, we'll make it more enjoyable for different players. We'll grow player bases. A little bit of where I would take your thinking to. I wonder if you're right. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I disagree, and I'm not sure I agree. But I love that as that question mark right at the end there, because I do think ultimately we need more diversity in play experience, and I think that is coming. But is it days or weeks away? I think it's more like months away. Maybe even years. The game's been, this game is just getting started. There's been maybe there's 5,000 human players playing it. If there one day is 50,000 active players or 500,000, things could go crazy. But for now, we're not there. Maybe we're even smaller than that. And I remember when there was 100 or 200. So we've seen significant growth, and I look to a future where we'll see even more. And thank you, Perry, for the comment. I appreciate that. And thank you guys for your time and attention. If you enjoy the content, you stuck around to the end, drop the like, consider subbing. Have an amazing day. God bless.